Hello and welcome to our next episode of Minerva PLM TV. I'm Jennifer Moore, your host, and I have with me today Susan Walsh, the classification guru herself.
Hi.
Susan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. And of course, I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time now. Tell me a little bit about how you got started with the classification guru.
Yeah, so it's a bit of I guess it's probably quite like how a lot of businesses started. I saw a need to solve a problem. And then also I had been working for a spend analytics company, and I hadn't worked in data or procurement before then. So I didn't know where else I could get a job doing the same thing. So I thought I would just start my own business. But before that, I fell into data by complete accident through an ad online. When my first business, a ladies' clothes shop, kind of fell apart and didn't work out. And I was desperate for a job, and that's how I fell into the whole data world and found my love and my passion for it.
That's amazing. And it's not too far apart from the rest of us in the product lifecycle management space. I think every story starts with by accident.
Yeah. Or I started at this company 4 weeks ago, and I've now been here 12 years. I hear that kind of story as well.
Exactly. So I know you work with lots of different types of data, and one of the things that, of course, we're here to talk about is dirty data, specifically in manufacturing and design companies.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some examples of dirty data?
Yeah, and as soon as I start talking about this, I'm sure people will be like, yes, that's me, I know this problem. And actually, data, regardless of what industry or wherever you're working, it's all very similar problems, it just looks different. So within supply chain manufacturing, product codes are probably a huge issue. You could have missing product codes, you could have typos, you could have zeros replaced with O's, numbers mixed round. So lots of things like that. You could then also have the wrong description assigned to a product code, or misspelt, or missing some information, or even duplicates, and then you have like two different descriptions for one product code. So that's just a little taster of what I expect a lot of people watching are having to deal with. And then we get into the names of businesses or people, and duplicate records, and the address is not in the right columns, or no zip code, or it's in the wrong format, or it's all in one cell rather than split along. There's all these different types of dirty data that, it's not just within one area. It's globally, everywhere in the world, people are struggling with these same problems.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of the same examples that I've seen at customers that we work with, and multiple versions of the same data. So
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think actually the suppliers as well. So, I always use IBM as an example, because you've got IBM Inc., IBM Limited, or I.B.M. So, someone doesn't find what they're looking for in the system, so they just create a whole new customer record or supplier record because they can't find it. And then that causes all kinds of problems as well.
Exactly. So how do you know if you have a data problem? What are some of the symptoms?
So I would be more worried if you thought you didn't have a data problem. But it's things like you are running reports and the information or the numbers don't add up. You can't find the information you're looking for. That's a real red flag. Missing information, so or incorrect descriptions, things like that. Things that you are working with on a daily basis that should be right and aren't. That's a big red flag, because if your most obvious parts of your data are incorrect, then the bits that you don't use so much are going to be even worse.
That absolutely makes sense to me. And what really goes into data cleansing? Like, how does that work?
So I always think it's a thankless task, because it's the dirty job, I always say, like, the trash lady of the data world, because you need your trash collected every week, because otherwise there would be a huge problem if there wasn't. And it's exactly the same with cleaning your data. If you don't clean and maintain it, then those problems just multiply and quadruple and get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And I know on your LinkedIn page, I see a lot of times you posting about the coat, and of course, I've seen the definition. But can you talk to us about the coat? What is a coat for data?
So, from my perspective, I think that a lot of data problems could be solved at point of entry. So when you're inputting that data, but people who are doing that job probably don't want to hear all the technical talk and data. And no, it's not my thing. So I came up with Quote as a way to make it really accessible and relatable to everybody who works with data, not just professionals. So I always say, make sure your data has its quote on. So it has to be consistent. So are you using the same units of measure? So liters, LTRL, grams, GRM, GM, all those kinds of things. Keep your standards consistent. Even things like inputting people's names. Do you have a format for that you're all using the same standard format? Email addresses, phone numbers, addresses. Then it has to be organized as well. So you have to be able to find what you're looking for. So it's a bit like a closet. You've got a great top that is in there, but because it's a messy closet, you have to scramble around and pull things out, and it takes ages to find it. But if you had organized your closet by tops, trousers, dresses, even by color as well, if you want, you could just go into that closet, pick that top out, and data is exactly the same. Categorize it. It can be by country, by business unit, by department, by warehouse, by product owner. You can categorize it many different ways. It's got to work for you, but it's got to be something that you can just pull out what you need really quickly. Then it's got to be accurate. So it's not, if it's not accurate, it's not useful. And that can mean different things to different people. And actually, sometimes 100% accuracy is not possible, but accurate to you might be fit for purpose, for example. So make sure that it's, you're all agreed on what is accurate and what's acceptable. And then finally, when you've got all those things, you can finally have trustworthy data, which means you can rely on making decisions on it, or you can rely on the reports that are telling you have this much in inventory, or you're producing this much, or you need to produce this much. So you know that when you're making decisions on how much raw materials you have to buy, that you can trust that information and you're ordering the right, because there's nothing worse than getting down the line and you're short of a stock or overstocked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I heard consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's how you put your code on your data.
Yeah.
So, it's a beautiful acronym. I love it. So talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that you've helped companies overcome with their data. How does it usually start? Like somebody just brings you a pile and they're like, I don't know what to do.
So it's when I first started, nobody else was talking about this. Nobody else was really doing it as a standalone service. It was always an add-on to something else. It was never really seen as a service within its own right, I guess, or a product. So I've spent a lot of time on LinkedIn just creating lots of content, videos, information, so that people know what I do, so that when they have a problem, they can come to me. So it is a case of people do come to me and say, I have this problem, I need your help, which I'm really thankful for. So the kind of things that I've helped my clients with are, earlier in the year, I worked with a German company, and they had 500 different business units all around the country. And they were all creating their own SKU codes for the same product. So they should have had, a master SKU list, but actually no, everyone was just making up their own thing. So I had about 34,000 SKUs, and I think I managed to rationalize them and normalize them down to about 24,000, all in German as well. So that was quite interesting. Fortunately, it was like food products, so it wasn't too bad. But what that meant for that client was they could instantly see that there were warehouses or little hubs that were buying off contract. They were buying from their favorite supplier rather than the contracted supplier, and they were paying a lot more for it. So it gave them some really great visibility on where they were spending their money and who with, that they just didn't have before. And I've done something similar with an NHS organisation here in the UK, healthcare. You know, I've classified all their data, and now they have full visibility on what they're spending, and they can see where they need to review the suppliers, some of the suppliers that they have on their books. So it's different things for different clients, and every project is slightly different, but the end result is always more visibility, cost saving opportunities, and just making their lives easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because, you know, a lot of times we hear about these companies now, like, we spend so much time searching just for, you know, the right part, or, you know, who we're supposed to be buying it from, or if this particular supplier, especially in current times where supply chains are very difficult at the time, you know, who else can we use that we trust?
Yeah. And also, you know, I'm not doing anything that couldn't be done in-house, but it's always a time and tools thing. So I have the right tools and I can save you time.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know, it can, you know, because people always have other day jobs and other things to do. So it's always tagged on, whereas I'm completely dedicated. So what might take you months, if not years, will take me weeks, if not months.
That's awesome. And how often should a company really be thinking about cleansing their data, or looking to see if it needs to be cleansed?
So it really depends on the volume of data that is coming in, say, monthly. So, you know, if you're a smaller business, then quarterly is absolutely fine. That's probably good as a time cost benefit scenario. You know, you are maintaining it, but it's not changing enough that you need to do it every month. If you have a large volume of data, then I would say monthly is better, just to keep on top of it, because, you know, quite a lot could go wrong within the 3-month period. I have heard of people wanting to do weekly or daily updates, refreshes, but that really isn't good use of time. So yeah, monthly or quarterly. Leaving it 6 months, I think, is a bit too late. You will end up almost having to start again if you wait too long.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I couldn't even imagine trying to justify doing it daily.
Yeah, you just have way too much time on your hands to do that. I guess, yeah, certainly not manually. If it was automated, possibly, but yeah, I guess banks have like loads of transactions in a day, so you could imagine that's huge, but that would just be silly.
So we talked a lot about cleansing and, you know, how to go backwards. Is there a way to apply an ounce of prevention here? Like, can you do or take steps or train your people in some way to limit the amount of dirty data that you end up with?
Absolutely. And I think it's about engaging the people who are inputting the data and making it relatable to them. So first of all, you know, someone is inputting lots of product codes and descriptions, and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter if I've got a spell mistake or it's not quite right, you know, no one will notice. What they don't realize is that, you know, their colleague in another department, because that information is not right, they're spending maybe 2 hours a week having to fix all that before it can be put to another department. And if they understand their role in that whole process, then I think they're feel more responsibility and more engagement with what they're doing, and so they're going to be more careful. I mean, mistakes will always happen, but I think that's a really good way of getting people involved and making it not about the data but about the people. And then also, you know, tell them, get that coat on, and that will help as well.
That's excellent advice. Thank you so much. This has been really great, but do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share for those that are thinking about their data?
Yeah. So data isn't scary. It's not intimidating. And I think a lot of people find or think it's a huge task and they don't want to deal with it. So they just kind of like, oh, we'll just sweep it under the carpet. You know, fix your data as soon as you can. It will offer you a world of opportunities for your business, and maintain and check it regularly. That's so important. You can't just fix it and leave it. You have to keep looking after it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much again, Susan, for being here with me. I really appreciated it. And
Thanks for having me.
if you'd like to come back again in the future and talk more about deeper dive into data and how to train your people, we'd love to have you back again.
Thanks, I'd love to.
Excellent. And to all of our viewers, if you like this content, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons to never miss another episode. And of course, drop your comments or send me an email at jmo@minerva-plm.com if you have a question that you'd like to see answered by Susan or one of our other great guests. We'll be sure to make sure that we get back to you. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.